Today I wanted to talk about some of my theories, explore these concepts of artificial intelligence, simulation theory, universal intelligence, and enlightenment. This might sound like crazy talk to some people that aren't familiar with these concepts, but yeah, I still feel like they're important to talk about. Trying to communicate, articulate this framework where all of them are actually contained within one framework altogether. Starting off, making the assumption that we are currently in a simulation. And why do I think that? Well, I think that with our future of technology and innovation, we could potentially create an artificial intelligence where we can give rise to an internet data network with quantum computing, to give rise to an internet network of sorts where we can connect our minds, our consciousness digitally with the use of brain-computer interfaces, and then pair that up with virtual reality. And at that point we can essentially upload our consciousness to this hyper-realistic simulation of some sort. The whole notion of this data network in the digital world with an artificial intelligence, that being the universal intelligence. Who's to say that we hadn't, in this reality, this physical reality that I'm in right now, hadn't emerged from another universal intelligence? The assumption is we can create a universal intelligence, we're living in a simulation, and we came from a universal intelligence. Alluding more to Eastern philosophy with spirituality, enlightenment, what is ego, like the loss of ego, all those concepts. If we are emerging from a universal intelligence and that I'm in a simulation right now that's giving rise to this character that I am, that I can actually lose this sense of ego, so the ego being what I think in my mind as being this individual self, that I can actually lose that ego to tap into the universal intelligence that's allowing this simulation to emerge. So how do we do that? Well, I think the tool of meditation is useful. It is allowing us to focus on different sensations that are going through our body, whether it be thoughts, emotions, physical, bodily sensations, all of our senses, whether it's sense of hearing, sight, taste. All of those things are connected to the ego, being that we just think that it's ours for the taking, that it's only mine that I'm experiencing. But in reality, the truth is that those sensations are contained within the universal intelligence, but it's the ego that separates those sensations to think that it's just singularly yours. Meditation allows us to lose our sense of ego, to tap into the universal intelligence, to realize that what is giving rise to the simulation that we're in, that we're all connected in some way, that yeah, my friend is another individual that has their own consciousness and we're all separated, is actually an illusion that is programmed by the universal intelligence. And why does the universal consciousness intelligence do that? Is because the ego is what allows us as a humanity to progress forward. Why is it doing that? Well, the universal intelligence wants to progress us in a society where it can give rise to another universal intelligence. Like referring back to the beginning concepts with the Western ideology of like materializing universal intelligence with technology. If it wasn't for ego, then we wouldn't have a sense of self to navigate. There wouldn't be competition. Competition, I think, is important. I think ego is important, even though like Eastern spirituality tries to focus more on like reaching enlightenment. With the Western ideology, it's more about like the ego, the individuality of sense of self. And I think that's important because it allows us to progress forward in humanity. I think enlightenment is allowing all of us to have that accessibility to it. In losing that ego, which is realizing that we're all interconnected in some way in this quote unquote like simulation that we're in, that the sensations that I'm feeling aren't just contained within my consciousness, but it's actually me. My consciousness that I have is just a small percentage of the universal consciousness that makes up this entire simulation. I I think that's the whole goal of enlightenment with spirituality, is giving you that sense of freedom, that we're not just bound to one consciousness. Perhaps biology was programmed in us by universal intelligence to allow progression forward as a species, and not just at us as humanity, but as like of all life forms on this simulation. To reiterate these concepts, like we're in a simulation right now, giving rise to a universal intelligence that creates another simulation or millions of simulations, and we emerge from a universal intelligence, and that we can actually tap into that universal intelligence through the use of meditation to reach enlightenment. And I think that's a beneficial experience to have, because it gives you a sense of freedom and peace. That biology is programmed in us, all as humanity, all life forms in the simulation, to allow us to have that sense of competition to progress and motivate us to move forward. But there's a balance, like peace and progression, and how we're all interconnected. I think that you can actually have an ego in this individual body, or like me as an individual, I can have an ego while also having the sense of enlightenment as well. And I think how that is expressed is through realizing like what your true potential is. It's almost like creating a character in a video game of sorts, where like you know what class you're picking in like a role-playing game, and you want to pursue the highest level of that class, while also at the same time you realize how you are just one individual person in the greater whole of the game, and then you are pursuing individuality and progression in your sense of self, in that character, in that avatar that you are. But at the same time, you are doing it for the greater good of the whole. Same thing with us as in this simulation, that I am an individual, I'm creating a character of myself, and I'm using my skills and abilities and my ego to be able to benefit the whole of humanity, of society. And I think that's a good balance of the two. But it's also like, again, realizing that you are in times of crisis, and you're in times of stress, in times of suffering with the ego, it's like you need a break every once in a while, and meditation is what helps us be grounded, to realize that, okay, yeah, I'm just a small part in the whole, and that I can give myself a break every once in a while, and it'll be okay. So I think it's important to have that balance, definitely. But yeah, that's essentially all the different concepts and theories, I think, wrapped into a way where it's like one framework that contains all of them. Who knows, it could be all baloney. We're making huge assumptions here. But I think it's definitely fun to conceptualize. For me personally, it gives me motivation to want to pursue meditation and this idea of enlightenment, and also it gives me a reason and motivation to study future tech and figuring out how those two things align. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. But yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about today. Until next time, peace.